By all accounts, Netflix is having a pretty rough year. With plummeting subscriber numbers, increasing competition, and plenty of good news for people who like bad news, their crown as king of the streamers is growing heavier and less assured by the day. So, when The Gray Man made waves as an algorithmic winner, it felt like a port in a storm for the struggling platform. Adapted from a pulpy page-turner of the same name, fronted by a white-hot cast, and brought on home by the Russo brothers, still holding claim to 2 of the top 5 highest-grossing movies ever, this is an action thriller with everything going for it. Now let's have a gander at what all that talent and a $200 million price tag gave us. Oh, okay.
My God, how hard is it to shoot somebody?
I could criticise The Gray Man for its cliché collage of a plot, its insulting stupidity, or the disengaged central performance from the typically wonderful Ryan Gosling, but all that shoddy substance amounts to meagre drops in the bucket compared to what's smeared right on the surface. To put it bluntly, this looks like someone dumped cigarette ash in a lawnmower, then asked it to re-edit Agent Cody Banks to add more stepdad mustaches and interminable drone shots. Which begs the question, how and why does a film with all the money and resources in the world come out this visually confused, aesthetically ugly, and unintelligibly assembled?
I immediately don't like you.
Well, I'm glad we're on the same page.
When you're bombarding an audience with a whole lot of visual noise, you want to make those images as easy to process as possible. 2 ways of doing this are 1. Directing the viewer's attention, and 2. Following the 180-degree rule. First, let's look at how to keep the eye on the prize with a textbook example. Mad Max Fury Road.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Watch this clip and think about where your eyes are drawn to in the scene.
Fuck them all!
Okay, we'll watch that again, only this time I'll place a crosshair on the screen. Notice how the significant actions and frame composition guide us towards and hold our focus on the centre of the frame. By directing and maintaining the viewer's attention in a small area, we can drink in the chaos without being confused by it. Now here's The Gray Man.
Wait a minute.
It's like trying to aim down a sniper scope from inside a spinning tumble dryer.
Report back to me when, I don't know, when it makes sense.
Second, let's talk about the 180-degree rule. To illustrate what that means, we'll use this sequence from Pulp Fiction.
Tell me.
Imagine a straight line running through the actors to create a horizontal axis. Uma Thurman on the left, and John Travolta on the right. When Tarantino cuts in for a closer shot, Thurman is to the left, looking right, and Travolta is on the right of frame, looking left.
Whoa, slow down, egghead.
Now look what happens if I screw with that. Same film, different scene. What if when we cut in closer, Amanda Plummer jumps from left to right? It feels totally off and forces your brain to recalibrate on the fly.
Just like that, reflexes.
The 180-degree rule helps establish and maintain a spatial relationship between 2 characters within a scene, regardless of edits, movements, etc. Effectively, keeping things anchored to one side of this line, keeps everything oriented in the environment regardless of action. Now let's apply this to the Grey Man's opening scene. Try to keep an eye on Ana de Armas as well as the direction she's moving in.
What?
She attacks from left to right, then right to left, then back again, now to the right, and back to the left, before teleporting back to the right. 11 cuts in 9 seconds with 6 180-degree jumps, all the while cutting back and forth between medium-wide and long shots in a low-light environment.
If you're gonna spew into this.
Later on, when Gosling is sprinting atop the roof of a tram, the tram seems to repeatedly change its locomotive direction from left to right to left, and back again. By forcing our eyes all over the place like this is some mad game of Pong, all you're gonna get out of this is eye fatigue. As our retinas struggle to relay the muddled stimuli we're receiving to our visual cortex, we tune out. If you can't focus on an image, you cannot retain it. If you can't retain an image, you cannot remember it. This display of cranked up editorial abandon infects every aspect of the Grey Man. It's why, by the end of the movie, we're shown Jessica Henwick and a team of CIA analysts annihilated by a teeth-melting explosion.
Shit!
Only for a few scenes later, Jessica Henwick returns unscathed, despite, you know, the fact we all just saw her get hit by an unsurvivable blast.
Shit!
In such instances, the filmmakers are actively banking on their audience's inability to remember something that happened moments ago. Because if you're able to meaningfully engage, then you might be able to unpick the web of nonsense they've haphazardly weaved.
We use action to advance story and character.
So that was a fucking lie.
If the components are this cruddy, how are they held together? With some sort of computer wizardry, perhaps?
I get it, you're glib.
Oh, and frame out, you sly devil. Are you trying to foreshadow something? Maybe something really shit?
Shit.
Oh, go on then, you handsome rapscallion, you.
Jesus. Well, that was unexpected.
Our brains are amazing little code-cracking machines, taking reams of audio, visual and tactile information and decoding them so we can navigate through our day-to-day. If something's off or inconsistent with our internal sense of logic, even if we can't put our finger on why, we most likely know something's rotten in Denmark. So when you're watching a gritty spy thriller meant to evoke real peril and a sense of tangible danger, only to be met with cartoonish, downright embarrassing digital fakery time and time again, it becomes borderline impossible to invest.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it?
The Grey Man is a low-contrast clip show of CGI fire, CGI smoke, CGI smog, and CGI explosions. The sheer amount of distractingly unconvincing effects work on display here meant that when I should be enraptured in a firework-dodging punch-up or a downtown dust-up, I instead felt overcome with the glaucoma of zeros and ones. Overabundant computer-generated imagery gets a pass in superhero movies or other works of fantastical fiction because, as an audience, we're prepared for that level of abstraction. Once primed for aliens, apocalyptic finger clicks, and flying billionaires, the suspension of disbelief has been calibrated accordingly to accept some obvious pixels amongst the physical world.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
The thing about the suspension of disbelief, though, is that it's not a one-size-fits-all thing, which is why this doesn't feel as unbelievable or just plain wrong as this. Now, I've got plenty of qualms with the work of Christopher Nolan, but I can't fault him as a passionate, committed technician who understands that, out with a fantastical setting, CGI is best used to supplement realism and not to supplant the reality of the world you're trying to build. It's a hard comparison to swallow when you consider that Nolan cared enough to craft Gotham City, the innermost workings of the unconscious mind, and an interstellar voyage by forging a marriage between the practical and digital assets, and each one of those films cost tens of millions less than the Russo brothers had to play with. And still the Grey Man opts for entirely fake smoke, faux fire, and fugazi kabooms, instead of, you know, using a smoke machine, some gasoline, and a book of matches. So why go to all this trouble for something that looks terrible when the practical alternative is cheaper, better, and altogether more in keeping with the grounded story you're trying to tell? It can all be traced back to the Russo brothers' many tours in the major studio trenches, wherein they drank the Kool-Aid of the Marvel mentality, aka shoot the movie and decide what's in it later. The Marvel mentality means giving yourself enough options to chop and change every detail, right up to the last second, to better optimize their brand and fit their well-honed formula. If you were to opt for the practical approach for the plumes of smoke, on-set explosions, and rupturing sets, to an extent, you've locked yourself into a choice, given that it's much harder to take that stuff out of a shot than it would be to add it in later down the line. We're now at the point of such a ludicrous over-reliance on effects artists, some of the costumes in the latest Doctor Strange are entirely CGI, because to do this most simple thing practically would mean planning and deciding on something in advance. Just listen to how the Russo brothers tackle their load-bearing set pieces.
And we reshot this sequence about 4 times over the course of making the film. We like to execute an idea, cut it together, look at it, come up with a better idea, execute it again.
I just made it up on the spot. Just came to me. And that's how this is gonna go.
I mean, why light or compose a shot to account for the use of real pyrotechnics or solid sets, when you can just kick the can down the road and outsource your indecisive nothingness to some poor, overworked effects house? Well, because when you do, it comes out looking like this. Aside from their intrusive and unattractive appearance, there's a terminal issue with the direction of these effects-heavy scenes. Time and again in The Grey Man, the actors don't sell the action or the effects. As the engine of this plane explodes, spewing fire and sending bolts of shrapnel whizzing through a disintegrating cabin, the flesh and blood actors should be reacting to the whipping winds and blistering heat. Instead, Gosling looks like his mind is elsewhere.
Dental plan!
Lisa needs braces.
Dental plan!
Lisa needs braces.
Dental plan!
Lisa needs braces.
Gosling never looks like he's fazed by this charcoal fog or searing blaze, because they probably didn't decide any of that was going to be there until after they'd wrapped principal photography. Storytelling, characterization, emotional or contextual weight, all victims of a more is more, death to depth attitude that values weightless spectacle over the truly spectacular.
This is quite possibly the most spectacular failure.
Time for one last comparative exercise that should illustrate just how bad The Gray Man looks in terms of cinematography, editing, directorial vision, colour grading, etc. This is a $5 million hand-to-hand showdown. And here's what 40 times that budget gets you. How about a nighttime shootout in an enclosed space? Well, surely we can improve upon that with an extra $175 million to work with. Given this is trying to meet that algorithmic sweet spot between James Bond and Mission Impossible, let's look at the financially commensurate parents before being too hard on their offspring. Here's a dogged pursuit full of property damage and danger, and here's a trailer for an energy drink that gives you a case of the Puddly Browns. There's the skydiving excitement of a big old airplane jump, and then there's a PS3 cutscene starring Lars and the real girl.
It's a fair point, huh?
It isn't an assault on the senses, it's an attack on memory. If we cannot assign an action to a person because everything's moving too fast, and if we can't pin an event to a corporeal space, then what's there to love, like, or even vaguely recall 10 minutes after the credits roll? The fights tell no story, but then again, the story doesn't tell much of a story. The cinematography is a flavourless mulch devoid of contrast or clarity, but what did I expect from the cinematographer behind a straight-to-DVD Anaconda sequel and G.I. Joe Retaliation? This isn't the fault of the effects studios or contracted workers called in to clean up the Russo brothers' cynical franchise starter. The fault lies at the top of the food chain, and the decisions they did, or more crucially, didn't make.
Ballsy.
They can do shootouts, they can film a narratively pertinent punch-up. And for whatever reason, this time around they sided with their worst instincts every time. It may be a solid gold hit and a silver lining for Netflix, but its inexcusable failings and unavoidable flaws are forever burnt onto the screen in black, white, and hideous grey. Chris Evans' best performance was in Sunshine for our Patreon producers Jennifer C, Claire MD, Becky O, Scared Confusion, and Nicholas LeRiviere. And remember when Billy Bob Thornton used to try, for all these amazing folks who support us over on Patreon. So what did you make of The Gray Man? Did you like it? Did you hate it? And when all's said and done, have Netflix ever succeeded at recreating that big screen blockbuster experience? Let us know down in the comments, as well as liking, subscribing, and sharing these videos wherever you can. If you're in a position to do so, maybe check out our Patreon at the link in the description below. As always, thank you for watching. Until next time, this is In Frame Out.